And welcome to this edition of Night Shift. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Kyle Nash and Jake Ferraro. Coming up here, those two are going to go head to head and argue at each other. That's what I want. I'm just going to moderate it. If you check out blackandgoldbanneret.com, both have written interesting columns, but yet with completely different thoughts on one particular game. And of course, that is the game in October when UCF travels to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators. Now, Jake Ferraro wrote about how the UCF-Florida game is the most important game on the schedule. Kyle Nash responded with his own column saying, it's a little overrated. Well, let these two explain, and then I'll ask each of them some questions. So let's start. Jake, why did you feel to write about the fact that UCF-Florida is the most important game for UCF on that schedule in Gainesville, which has been a big topic throughout the offseason here in UCF Night Nation?
Well, first of all, it's the fifth game of the season. Now, the fifth game of the season, you could start shaping out to see where you're at with players and the games on the schedule. But here's the fact of the matter, and I pointed this out immediately in the article. UCF all-time against SEC schools is 4-18. So you're already sitting there with a position of this is not going to go well. Now, the first two games of the season, they're cupcake games. It's New Hampshire, and the second game is Sam Houston. Then you get to two Big 12 games against TCU and Colorado, which TCU has a lot of uncertainty, and Colorado uncertainty as well. Now, Colorado is coming to Orlando, which helps. UCF has to hit the road. This is the point where I feel like this is the crucial thing. Let's say, hypothetically, even if they were to walk away with winning one of those two games against the Big 12 schools, you have to head up to Gainesville in a place which is viewed as a hard place to play. And obviously, with the SEC record, it does not favor UCF whatsoever. What if you were to go in there and pull off a win? Because without even thinking, people would immediately go and say that UCF will not be favored in that game and probably open up as maybe a 6.5, 7.5 point underdog. If you win this game, let's say they're 4-0 hypothetically, which could happen because I don't know how good TCU and Colorado is going to be. Let's say you go in there and win that game, you're 5-0. You carry that momentum on a road win against an SEC school where your history is already not well enough to begin with. You ride that momentum all the way, and you can really see how good you could potentially be. Now, there's a difference between most crucial game and most important game. Important is this is the biggest game on the schedule. What I mean by crucial is this determines your fate. So that's where I wanted to share before Kyle takes away, because this determines your fate on how good you can really be. Because what if they go up to Gainesville and they get blown out? Do you lose all momentum and your confidence right there? It could happen.
Now, Kyle Nash, quickly, as soon as he saw this column, complimented Jake, but in a very backhanded way, by responding by saying, "And I'm going to write a counter right away." And boy, you had fumes on your head, Kyle. You obviously rebut that, disagree with that. Tell me about your rebuttal.
First of all, I want to understand that I realize that Jake is just the messenger, but I mean, as I said to him before we got started, I don't want UCF to become like the Ohio State or Michigan that could get to the playoff, but then the fans still gripe, yeah, but we let that team beat us, like that kind of thing. Am I insinuating that the University of Florida is going to be an upcoming rival? No, I'm not going to rule it out either. You'd need to play sooner than in 6 more years. And I think that's really kind of the best argument Jake has, is it's a long way off. Listen, I get 4 and 18, rather 14 and 8 would be awesome. 4 and 18 is atrocious if you're looking at just the number. But Jake, you got to understand also, one of those games includes 42-0 at in the Swamp that I attended personally as a member of the Marching Knights in 1999. That's not something that really matters in the upcoming game here. And some of these do include games such as South Carolina's Steve Spurrier, unironically mentioning another Florida icon by pure accident, of course, in the Jadeveon Clowney days, that many believe in the UCF circles and fan bases out there that UCF really should have won. There were some errant calls, so we say. My opinion from the stands, I agree with some of them. But the punchline be this. That 4 and 18, you're talking about a school that's only how many years old in sports again? I know Elo knows that answer. I know it's not many, right? So with all of that being said, you're talking about the history of facing a blue blood that was treating UCF like Alabama treats a lot of their non-conference games, period. Am I firing shots? Maybe. But the punchline is this. The real thing, the best argument for concern in the Florida game has nothing to do with 2024 in and of itself. If you want to make it a big deal about for the fans or for recruiting, sure. Hey, listen, as the guy who wrote this article, just like you did on the Black and Gold Banneret, I want to make it clear. I already have it marked on the calendar. I have made that stand. I have gone up to my spouse and said, listen, I don't know what you're doing October 5th, but I will be in Gainesville. And what I'm doing Sunday in Jacksonville, covering the Jags as a student of the game as well for Jaguars on SI is a separate question. Yeah, it counts. What side's this, guys? When it comes to what this team's doing, I keep getting told making a playoff as a power. The reason they're campaigning to have been in the Power 5 in the first place as a program, UCF has told me, the program has told me the goal is playoff. And Florida does basically nothing for that. If they're in a position to where they don't win the Big 12 championship, which could happen. Listen, the Big 12 is a better conference than get credit. If they're trying to come in as an at-large, every talking head out there will do and continue to do what they do to UCF every time they get that rare SEC win. They will take anything out of it. Oh, Florida's in a rebuilding year. Oh, Florida was looking past UCF because they have the most difficult schedule in the country. And they'll do everything to tear down that win, and it won't matter come late November when the CFP is gathered around trying to find those 12 teams.
Okay, but let me ask you this question. So when I was the one who's saying it's the most crucial game, and obviously you said it's not the most crucial game. There's a difference between most crucial game and most important game. So when you look at their schedule, what is the most crucial game? Is it the Arizona game? Is it the BYU game? Is it Arizona State? Is it the first road Big 12 against TCU? What do you mean by saying it's not the most crucial game? What is?
Well, okay, that's a fair question too. Now, within my article on the blackandgoldbanneret.com, I say in particular Utah. I'll even take a defense for Arizona, as they're both schools that are extremely good historically. And in the case of Utah, 6 of the past 10 years, 10 seasons, they have been ranked in the top 25 at the end of the season. That looks a lot better facing the committee. By the way, having won the Pac-12 most recently, not that, that conference means as much as
it's all done now. Yeah, it's all done. Bye-bye.
It's not ACC bad, but it's pretty bad. Shout out to Eric Lopez, my favorite FSU Seminole fan as well. But sorry, Eli, I didn't mean to make you catch strays there. I always have to acknowledge your fanhood, man. But listen, my punchline with that, because it's a good question. I would pick Utah personally because that win, not only is it that last game of the year that leaves that final impression that the CFP puts entirely too much weight on, but the accolades that Utah has accrued versus Florida of late, if you look at just ranking, it beats the heck at what the Gators have done. When the last time the Gators have done anything, most of the analysts that'll be talking crap on UCF are the ones that played for the Gators last time they were successful. So
but let me ask you this. Now, we don't know how good the Big 12 is going to be as far as like the teams and the records go, but when you say crucial game, so let's say that this is going to happen. And I'm not saying that it's going to, because I think UCF is going to be bowl eligible. But what if they come into that game, let's say 7-4, they're not going to make the Big 12 championship? That's the point of crucial game. Because going back to what I said earlier, let's say this happens. They win the first 2 cupcake games. They beat TCU. They beat Colorado. You go in and get an impressive road win against an SEC school, which, by the way, like I said, you look at the history, you ride that momentum all the way up. Maybe you drop 1 or 2 conference games. But I mean, what if you go into Utah 7-4, nothing to play for as far as like a conference championship game berth or to make a better bowl game?
So if you're trying to make it, try to sneak in as an at-large in the playoffs or do something to, even if the mission is to just get a better bowl game than going down to the Gasparilla again. No disrespect to the Gasparilla Bowl. It's fun to go to Raymond James and cover a game. I get it. but I know the program at large would want something better. And winning at Utah does that. Period. Point blank. End of story. If you're trying to make an outlier as a playoff team in that 12, and granted, like you stated very eloquently, we don't know the state, not just of the Big 12, but how much are these schools that have started to get into the Power 5 going to beat up on each other? How common will the 10-win team actually be? There's going to be a lot of teams vying for it. And at the day's end, I know won't know how good the Big 12 is, but I do know for a fact that UCF's got some of the better teams in the Big 12 on it. And Utah, among the teams in the Big 12 right now, except for maybe Oklahoma State, is one that gets respect year in and year out in the sport of college football.
All right, let me jump in here as the moderator, because I will I'll take some contrarian point of views for both arguments. But let me ask.
Actually, Kyle, that you said it was at Utah, that game. It's actually in Orlando. Actually, it wasn't. It's not at Utah. You said at Utah. Actually, you did.
Oh, that's a mistake. Yeah, no, this is going to be a great Black Friday game.
It's in Orlando. Oh yeah.
A tradition that Knight fans know and love at the Bounce House for it being a crucial game.
In Kyle's defense, he's thinking about Taylor Hendricks in Utah. That's what he's thinking about, Utah traveling there, because that's about
he's
not going to have.
There is an article about Taylor Hendricks with the Jazz on blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Very good. Saying. Let me ask you both this. How much is the win-loss record by Florida and UCF going into the game impacts your arguments? In other words, could you be persuaded based on the record, either good or bad? UCF has to play Colorado before Florida. They got to play at TCU. Florida's opening got Miami at home. They've got Texas A&M. This game could be either really, really good, where maybe it's a sneaky, like, top 25 game, maybe a game day sleeper, or it could be a dud, two teams with multiple losses, and this game is relegated to SEC Network. How much does that influence where you both stand? Which one wants to take
As far as UCF, I don't think it matters much, because I think Florida's been not much in the top 25 rankings as of late, but I mean, this game can shape up for UCF, because even still, hypothetically, I still truly believe this. Even if UCF has a 3-1 or 4-0 record and they're going into Florida with Florida, they probably could be 2-2. We don't know how good Florida is going to be. Their coach is going to be on the hot seat. But even with all that, still, UCF would probably still get disrespected and be 6.5, 7.5 point underdog. And if they come away with a win, and of course, Kyle, you already said you're going to be there. Eric, I'm not sure about you. The UCF fans will be there. They will be loud, and they're going to let their voices be heard. If they get this win, this is bragging rights with them, and it could shape up to be a pretty good night for those Knights. The pun.
I see. Yeah. Well, and I'll even capitulate this, Jake. If somehow the Gators turn in an 8, 9, 10 win record, that does change a lot. It would also be the biggest damn story in the nation for what the Gators are expected versus what they do with what people have already said in the preseason is the most difficult schedule in the country. Where you have a difficult schedule, you also have opportunity. Unless you're USF and then you get the hell beat out of you by everybody you schedule, that's that difficult piece. We've seen that happen before too in the past. Shouts to FAU, I guess. Anyways, but the punchline's this, guys. If that happens for the Gators, Billy Napier will become the biggest hero in Gainesville, and it will be a story that Kirk Herbstreit, Joel Klatt, Paul Feinbaum will lose his effing mind, and it will be a national story. And at that point, listen, complete capitulations that it would be the most crucial piece in not only this, but moving forward should UCF win that game. Moreover, if the Gators are that good and UCF loses, they get that quality loss that everybody's looking for in the schedule there on the committee. Am I right?
Let's get into it. Now, here's my counterpoints. I'm going to start with you, Jake, and I'm going to counterpoint yours, then I'm going to counterpoint Kyle, and I'll ask you both my counterpoints here. Jake, it seems to me the argument you're making is if UCF can't beat Florida, that will derail the Big 12 season. That's why you believe it's a crucial game. Even though historically, I'll go back to 2007, UCF got humiliated in Tampa by South Florida 64-12. Everybody thought they were in the toilet. They actually bounced back from that, ended up winning their first conference championship game. So isn't Kyle's point, and some that would say this game is not as crucial because you could still recover as long as, with the long Big 12 schedule after the Florida game. How do you respond to that?
We don't know exactly. I look at who they're playing is because if you lose that game, you can have a 2 to 3 loss skid before that Arizona game.
They could win out also in the Big 12. Like if they were to win out, get to the Big 12 title game, then the Florida game didn't matter as much. It was not as relevant if they lost that game. It didn't have an impact. They can still. I don't think the season's shut down.
I still think it can, just based on the fact that when we always speak about how much everyone loves the SEC, and everyone will always point out, oh, the SEC, you beat a team like that. But for them, if they lose that, I just feel like they could lose some momentum, because if they're 3-1, 4-0, they go in there and lose. Maybe it loses some hope there. I feel like they could just lose some hope there. And maybe they go to, I don't remember, are they playing at Iowa State or they're playing against BYU?
At Iowa State. They host
BYU. Iowa State. Yeah, and then you go on the road and then you lay another egg. So, I mean, that's the point I'm saying is you win that game, even if you were to come away with one loss during that stretch, which we don't know what game it is, but if you followed up with a loss at Florida and then another road loss, I mean, that's really going to be deflating.
Now, Mr. Nash, here's my counter to your article point. You just said Billy Napier could become the story. The story of college football. They have a great season. Isn't that why UCF has to win this game? Because this is the game you've wanted. If UCF loses this game, there's a percentage of the fan base that will check out on this team. There are going to be more people that are going to come to this Florida game than there is to Ames, Iowa against Iowa State or Morgantown, West Virginia. You know this, and I know this. There's going to be casual people that don't watch UCF all year that will watch this Florida game. It's just like you and I on week 1 of the NFL. Why do I bring up the NFL, Kyle? You know who the Jaguars are playing week 1, Mr. Nash? Who are they playing?
They're going to be losing to your Miami Dolphins, who put in a new defensive coordinator that relies on a man defense that we're playing in a.
Let me expand on that. They're going to be losing to the Dolphins. You and I are going to be down there in South Florida. We're going to be talking a lot of smack that week. We're not. Who's going to talk smack to you this when Jacksonville's playing Tennessee? Nobody. So that Jaguar game is crucial in a lot of reasons in week 1 that we'll get into when we get to your podcast later in the next month and talk NFL preview. But how do you respond to that, Kyle?
Well,
the fact that there's more eyeballs going to be on this game, and you know this. If UCF loses to a Florida team that is perceived to be down, there's going to be a lot of skeptics and negativity around the UCF program.
Well, no, that's very easy. First of all, you and I both know that the UCF Mafia, such as they are, live and die by a damn touchdown for or against. So please, we keep talking about momentum with that. There is none. It's a constant state of flux. Okay, we live in Florida. We're Orlando, more specifically, where theme parks are a thing, and it's a roller coaster for the fan base. So there is no consistency of positivity. Okay, that being said, you mentioned the national spotlight. And like you always do, Eric Lopez, you focus on those games. You have many awesome article breakdowns on the blackandgoldbanneret.com that talk about the turnout and the TV ratings and all that are fantastic. But you tell me that they won't have those same eyeballs from the Colorado game already? The potential to beat Shedeur and primetime Sanders is, if they take care of that as a conference game and then lose to Florida, there's still going to be at least they won the conference game and they still have that path. The
only thing I would say to you about that, Kyle, is I feel like a lot of people are already buying out of the Deion Sanders and the Schroeder Sanders hype. And a lot of people looked at Colorado last year and said that this team's not very good. And obviously we don't know how good they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be good. Right now, I don't think they're going to make a bowl game, but
right.
That's why I would kind of disagree with what you're saying about the Colorado game, because a lot of people like me are writing them off. I don't think Colorado's going to be that good. Being
said, they're fun and they're still a draw, and those eyeballs will be on there. And the question that's posed is, will the casuals run away after seeing UCF's performance? And if they look impressive enough and get that conference W, which, let me be clear, I'm not disagreeing. that there's been a lot more, how you say, flash than foundation in a lot of what's going on with Colorado. I actually expect them to beat expectation for one key reason. Pardon my bias as he shows off the Aaron Evans original painting of him as an offensive lineman again. But Dion actually focusing on the trenches, for my money, that's 1 or 2 extra games that the analysts aren't going to give them that he's going to get. That's just my opinion there.
By the way, you and Joe Klatt agree. You and Joe Klatt are on the same page on that.
Listen, Joel Klatt, and rightly so. Joel Klatt is one of the best college football minds out there. Paul Feinbaum should take a note. Anyways, with all that being said, man, I know where you're coming from. Do I think they'll miss the bowl game? I'm not quite there. They damn sure won't be a playoff team on that. We'll agree. So, yeah, I mean, 6 wins. Golly, you could kind of slip and fall and get 6 wins, right?
Well, it doesn't matter. That doesn't, but that has nothing to do with the box office. In Kyle's defense, the tickets for the Colorado game, regardless of how good you think they are, it's through the roof. It's going to be one of the most expensive UCF home tickets.
Well, forget tickets, Elo. Reference your own articles. The numbers they draw on TV are absolutely stupid.
If they'll draw well, and let's not forget, and I'll defer to Kyle, you cover the NFL draft. Shakur Sanders will be one of the top quarterbacks if he has a good, strong year.
Yeah, he's already getting that hype. That's a good point.
So I think that's going to help the Colorado game. I like your Colorado argument better than Utah. I think the Utah game may not be as big as we end up thinking, because I'll give you this scenario. What if Utah's locked up a Big 12 title game appearance going into that game at UCF, and they know they have to win the Big 12 title to get a spot in the playoff? There's no guarantees the Big 12 will get another at-large or not. I think Utah would rest players, especially Cam Rising, who can't stay healthy.
They could, actually. Yeah, they could. That's something I didn't even think of that, Eric. That's a good point.
I think this will be one of the many consequences of expanding the playoff, and with the championship game still having a significance. And the flaw. And let me just clarify this before people get. I'm for expanding the playoff. I thought it should have been 8, not 12. It should not have been. I think 12 is too much. One of the issues they've done with this format is, if you're a conference champion, the 4 highest ranked conference champions automatically get a bye. Correct. Doesn't matter what your record is. So what they put is, okay, the championship game means a ton. So if you're Utah or UCF, let's say UCF has this great year and you're Gus,
we should be right.
And UCF is like 10-1. Are you going to risk playing KJ Jefferson for a game that really won't matter in the big picture? I think a lot of teams across the country are going to strategize where certain team players will not play every game, kind of like in the NFL, Kyle, week 18. I'm not saying college football will get to that week 18 level, but I do think we'll have some of that, which is why I agree with Jake on this standpoint. Florida is very critical in that, because if UCF were to beat Florida, it is an SEC opponent. It does give you more credibility moving forward, whereas if you lose that game, I think the pundits will say, oh, yeah, they might be near the top of the Big 12, but how good are they? They lost to Florida.
Okay,
right?
So 2 points. First of all, let's pretend that Utah scenario happens. And God bless it if it does. That's great for UCF if they do as well as forecasted, right? We're being a lot of the people at large have them at 8 wins. Really, honestly, I'm not going to feel confident with any prediction until I see the offensive line in the first 2 or 3 weeks. But 8 wins, 7 wins, not an unreasonable expectation in the preseason to start out. I haven't, like I said, I'm not doing my full analysis yet. That'll come closer to August on the Black and Gold Banneret here on the Night Shift podcast. So let's be clear about that. But let's pretend that Utah scenario happens. That means they still had to beat Arizona to be a threat to get to the Big 12 championship. That game suddenly then became the most important. Then if Utah's doing that, resting players, chances are that they're doing it because UCF's the runner-up, and they'll be headed over to Utah, and I would have gotten it right in that concept, to host the Big 12 championship game. It's very unlikely the scenario, because I feel like this Big 12 conference, as we see it today, again, obviously none of the games been played, but you said it yourself, Jake, we don't know how it's going to shake out. It's all incredibly unpredictable, but the one thing that's consistent in the Big 12 man, there's a lot of stuff that's close, right? If the last year was any indication, So then if you want to take Utah off the table unofficially, cool. I counter with Arizona. Then on top of that, well, the pundits will get on UCF's case if they lose to Florida. Sir, I again evoke the quality loss defense in that if
I don't agree they're going to get a quality. People expect Billy Napier to get fired during the season.
That's my point. Exactly. Thank you for making my point for me. It's a lot easier that way. And if they beat Florida, they'll still be that same team that's rebuilding, that looked past UCF, that isn't worthy. And more than that, they weren't really that into it because it's not an SEC. And imagine if UCF gets another coach fired, Eric Lopez, as I point out in the article itself on the Black and Gold Banneret.com. That will make Florida look even worse and then further diminish the victory.
Except I don't think it diminishes in the fan base's mind. Who's going to be spent? The fan base are the ones going to be buying tickets and donate to the programs.
And that's great. That's nothing to do with 2024. That is a 2025 conversation, potentially.
So let me ask you this. If that game is not that crucial, why are you going?
Because it's awesome. It's football. Hello.
Why aren't you going to Ames, Iowa, Fort Worth?
Hey, and honestly, listen, and I mentioned this in the article too. No one's saying the ish isn't going to be fun, right? If you want, for you history buffs out there, this is the War of 1812. Britain couldn't accept that the U.S. broke off and won the revolution. They started some more ish. We got another war. And then somehow or another, the U.S. won that too. Okay? Florida still thinks of UCF as the little brother. Imagine if they lose again. The fans are going to love that. And I think it'll be funny. And I have Florida fans in my life. I want to see their faces.
You're making the argument here for Jake and me. There's no Iowa State people in your life that's going to rub it into you.
Sure, but you know what cancels all that out? If they lose, making it to the damn playoff.
That's a big if. Well, that is a big if, though. The Florida thing is more
That's
of
a really big if.
It's a big if.
Is it?
It's
hold on. For all the hype I keep hearing about
from the national media,
they put UCF at 8 wins. When has
middle of the pack? That's middle of the pack in the league.
When has the national media ever put that much faith in UCF football?
They're in the American. They were always the pick. They're the American.
You're dodging the question. Them being picked as middle of the pack and not last or in the bottom of it already shows an evolution that they are compelled to believe what Gus Malzahn's done with this program. Even more than some UCF fans, I might add.
I don't know about that. All right, make your final arguments here to the jury here.
It'll be a fun one for sure. Okay, Kyle, in a straight up question, do you see UCF being 4-0, 3-1, or 2-2 entering that game?
So if I'm being my typical hedge your bets, straddle the fence self, I'd say 3-1. I think they get.
Okay, I was about to say I think.
I'm not ruling
if you
out
ask me 4-0, I could see happening. But if you ask me straight up, I think they would drop that TCU game on the road. But TCU is another team. I don't know how good they're going to be because 2022 they made the national championship, and then you want to talk about a crucial game? They lost that Colorado game and then completely flunked. They didn't even make a bowl game last year. Correct. But TCU is a team. I don't know how good they're going to be, but if you ask me right now, they'd be 3-1 going in that Florida game. But although 4-0, I could see happening.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a great.
Jake, to your defense, you would argue pointing the TCU Colorado game that derailed the TCU season in one way. So in a way, that makes your argument. On the other hand, though, that makes Kyle's argument because while that jump started Colorado's hype, they didn't really take advantage of it.
No, they didn't. They had that ugly win against Colorado State, and then, of course, the immortal when they blew the 29-0 game against Stanford, which I still can't believe they blew that game.
Neither does Dion. Listen, and I think the factor there, too, that I think has been canceled out some is how Colorado has more depth this than last year. And personally, listen, I think UCF gains, if you're talking about between those two games in Utah and Colorado, Colorado's the more crucial game, using my dude Elo's defense, the eyeballs are going to be there. And this team responds to a bounce house crowd. That's not just me talking. I can back that with numbers. I was not over and above being there for game day in 2018. Like, what this team does when that crowd is jumping, everything from just myrtleizing freaking Cincinnati at game day to the Holy Holler being a thing. I don't remember if that was actually but any game that
Holy Holler was in Tampa. I know that's like our secondary.
But yeah, I had to correct that. But just the USF games in general, even Cincinnati since then, that big run that decided the game. I think that was by RJ. So yeah, all that being considered, heck, what they did against Oklahoma State was again another instance. I know that Elo's going to bring up Baylor, but frankly, hey, listen, the one advantage I feel like UCF's going to have this year that'll make a difference in this Florida game is maybe they'll actually have their starting quarterback healthy by week frickin' 5. But here's to praying.
And for someone who did graduate from Oklahoma State, I did see that game at OSU as a trap game, but no one saw what happened that day when they got destroyed 45-3, and that was coming off of the Bedlam win against OU, a top 10 win. And then I said it all week. I was like, this game feels like a trap game. They never played down in Orlando. And of course, it rained so heavily. You guys were there for that game, correct?
I was the only one who was working. Everybody else
was. Wow. Well, you were busy trying to make sure you didn't get wet in your suit.
Facts of the case, man.
It'll be tough environments. I wonder what Colorado's do. Kyle, last thing I'll ask you. If Florida was to lose against UCF, is their coach gone?
Oh, my gosh. Hey, listen, there's a
Absolutely.
reason. There's a reason. I'm not going to – nothing's absolute, Jake. Listen.
Okay, I'm just asking.
You should be a pod host yourself. You're dangerous, sir. No, anything absolutely, because honestly, at that point in the season, are they gone by the next bye? Hey, listen, I'm here to tell you. I was, granted, as a member of the Marching Knights, I was in Alabama and Tuscaloosa for the win that caused the firing that brought Nick Saban into the building, okay? Like, I think that very sort of thing could happen if Billy Napier loses to UCF at the Swamp, for sure, yeah.
I'll leave you with my last thoughts here on an article about Billy Napier, who is, quote, on the hot seat at Florida. The head coach has put together 2 losing seasons at the helm, and patience may run low if the Gators are to have another underwhelming campaign.
Spoken like a true. I would have been far more harsh.
Yeah, there you go. We'll find out. What does everybody else think? Florida UCF. Is it the most crucial game of the night season, or is it not? Check out blackandgoldbanneret.com. Jake Ferraro writes why it is the most crucial UCF game of the year. Kyle Nash says, write to column why it's not the most crucial UCF football game of 2024. Read it, decide, and pick a side.
Let us know your thoughts. Do the comments especially if you're watching this on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. So, all that stuff. And or if you're listening on the pod, whatever, hit it up on Twitter. What is it? As UCF Banneret _SPN. There it is. I remembered it for once. There you go. On because we don't talk about being on X. I have a family to think about.
On that note, hope you enjoyed this debate. UCF Florida. We'll have more UCF football just around the corner. Some more content plus UCF basketball. All UCF on Black and Gold Banneret. Thank you, gentlemen.
Before we go, Jake, tell the world where you could be found too, my guy.
That's true.
I could be found on X, username 18JXXX18. The Stars towels are behind me. I cover the Dallas Stars at Wada Hockey, and I also cover the Dallas Mavericks for the Smoking Cuban. Mavericks just landed Klay Thompson. The fan base is beyond excited. They got the big 3 in there, and this Dallas team looks ready to run the West back, certainly, after the finals loss.
You mentioned the Stars. Who won the Stanley Cup again? Remind me.
The Florida Panthers did, and if I don't know what the episode number is, Kyle, I actually picked the Panthers in 6. It was Panthers in 7.
I believe it was 114 of the student of the game. So,
but
yeah,
I did pick Florida to win, and now, Kyle, can we finally say this hockey's more loved in South Florida? Can we finally see him in downtown Fort Lauderdale, maybe?
I love hockey. If I had more time, I'd cover it. I know that. I know our friend Nick Porcelli had a lot to say about it too. But Elo, man, shout your stuff out for the people as well.
Eric Lopez, Elo, check it out all there. I'm getting ready to go to Gainesville, UCF, Florida. I think it's a big game. So maybe Kyle and I, maybe we could drive to. Can we go on the city? Can I hit you on a ride? We could argue about it on the car ride.
That sounds like a hell of a time, actually. And of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as a student of the game, only because Jacob mentions it. Also, check out the Student of the Game podcast Wednesday nights, 9:00 Eastern. Maybe Jake will jump on and talk some Dallas
I'm down.
I know next month you and I are going to yell at each other about Dolphins Jaguars week 1. That's going to be great.
That's going to be fun too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. The AFC East is always a good episode. So an honor, joy, and privilege for Eric Lopez, Jake Ferraro. I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game for the Night Shift podcast. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.